Welcome back to A Little Bit of Cheese, your daily bite-sized Wisconsin sports podcast. I'm your host, Cody Depios. I want to thank you for being here with us once again today. There's a whole lot of stuff to go through today, so we're going to try to go a little bit rapid fire to try to keep it where it's just a little bit of cheese, not a whole lot of cheese. You don't need a lot. Things can happen to your stomach if you eat too much cheese. I've learned that the hard way a couple of times, so we're just going to take it just a little bit today, just a little bit. We're going to keep it that way once again today, but should be a good show. At the top here, some exciting news. Xavier McKinney was named Defensive Player of the Week. He was the first Packer to have done so since Rasul Douglas did it back in 2021. And he is the first Packer since Charles Woodson to record both a fumble recovery and an interception in the same quarter, which I've mentioned those two in the same sentence a lot. And now, of course, I can finally go in and say, like, hey, yeah, this is kind of the same conversation here. Charles Woodson, Xavier McKinney, a lot of the same kind of things going on here, the same kind of effect to a defense. And you've seen that. He's on a 6-game interception streak, which dates back to Week 18 of last year with the Giants, where he actually had 2 interceptions in that game. So he is on a historical tear right now, where he's had 7 interceptions in his last 6 games. He's the first player in NFL history to have an interception in the first 5 games that he has played with his new team. Like, this stuff it's just hard to put into words, but the effect that he has had on the defense combined with just not having Joe Barry as a defensive coordinator is where you can get some Super Bowl hopes with this team. And I really dislike throwing that kind of stuff out there because I am a superstitious person myself when it comes to all these heartbreaking losses that we talk about in Wisconsin sports. I bring it back to myself. And what are the stupid things that I said that may have led to a superstition, maybe the football gods or the baseball gods or the basketball gods coming back to bite us. But it's really, really eye-opening, and I hope that it continues that way for Xavier McKinney to be the first Packer to possibly win Defensive Player of the Year since Charles Woodson. Now, it's going to be tough, of course, because it's usually an edge rusher or a middle linebacker that would get it for Defensive Player of the Year. Even when Trayvon Diggs had 11 interceptions in a season, he didn't get it because really he didn't deserve to get it because his coverage skills were terrible. He just so happened to leave guys open enough that a quarterback would throw his way that much more, and that's how he got that many interceptions. His ball skills were very good that year for Dallas, but McKinney and where he is graded in coverage in the secondary is near tops in football. I actually believe he is the top cover safety in football right now, which you can see with 5 interceptions in 5 games, and there's a couple of times where he could have had maybe even an extra interception. He could have had 2 realistically on Sunday, but I think we'll be okay with 1, considering the entire team had just 7 interceptions last year, and now you have 1 guy with 5 through 5 games. And turnovers, we always bring it up to a key in the game. It's a cliche thing to say, but if you can win the turnover battle, you give yourself so much more of a better chance to win, and that's how your Packers are 3-2 after missing Jordan Love for 2 weeks, which, of course, you go and you can look at what Malik Willis has done as well. But without the defense playing as well as it has, you don't have those wins against the bad teams either. Some other Packers news: Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson were back in practice today. This is good news for both of those guys. Of course, Watson was dealing with the ankle injury, and Romeo Doubs was out due to personal reasons. We talked a little bit about it this week, but the Packers are moving past it, and I think at a really good rate here. Like, you can even look up Packers on Google right now, and you're not going to find really any Romeo Doubs story, which that was the story at the beginning of the week because you had a player that was suspended because he voluntarily missed out on practice, and that's a big story, especially for a team with as high a caliber as the Green Bay Packers. But now Doubs back in practice. LaFleur said they're going to move past this. What's done is done. I don't know if we're ever going to find out exactly what happened in that situation, but you can kind of go ahead and guess, and I talked a little bit about it yesterday. But it was probably he saw the game plan on Wednesday, didn't like his involvement in that game plan, especially with Christian Watson out, and he just decided he did not want to be involved. He didn't feel valued as a player, which it sounds like Matt LaFleur had a really good conversation with him on Monday, and that things are going to go back to normal. So I hope that we never have to talk about this again, and I actually expect that we won't. This is probably going to be like at the end of Romeo Dobbs' tenure in Green Bay. I expect for it to be like a small conversation, like, hey, you remember that one week when he kind of went AWOL and he just felt underappreciated and he wasn't there at practice because he felt he wasn't getting enough targets? Boy, I'm sure glad he got past that. That's the kind of things that's where I expect this whole thing to end up, because he's a hardworking player. He's only received praise ever since he stepped in Green Bay, and he probably just had a bad week. And I think us all as humans, we can understand that as well. He's a 24-year-old kid, and when you're trying to make your own in the league and you see all these wide receivers getting hundreds of millions of dollars, you can probably feel like, hey, I want to be that guy too. Of course, that's understandable. Like, I'm a young person myself, and yeah, I can go and look and see all these other people doing similar things and wanting to make more money, doing what you do. But I think he now understands his role on the team, how he is appreciated, and he is going to get that payday when that contract comes up. And I think not that it's a respectable thing that he did, but you know that he values himself, and it's good that he's able to move past it. Now he's going to work in practice and be back there for the game. And now you get to pair possibly Christian Watson back in that receiver room. That is huge. And you saw even Bo Melton, Malik Heath had a couple of plays, Dontavian Wicks. Yeah, he's been dropping some balls, but like what all of these guys are able to do in the run game as well. Or we talked about Tucker Kraft's big play yesterday. If Dontavian Wicks doesn't hold that block all the way down the field, Tucker doesn't score on that play. And there are so many of those when guys get outside. Anytime Jaden Reed gets the ball out of the backfield, you need a wide receiver block. And so many times they've been able to get it. That's how you get yards after the catch. You got to have guys blocking downfield. And every single one of these guys has done that to a T. And that's why this offense is going to continue to move, and why it doesn't concern me even when you see Jordan Love have a couple of struggle plays, and the interception, of course, looked really bad on Sunday, which I look back at a video. Kurt Benkert is a good Packer follow on Twitter. He dives pretty deep into the stuff. Of course, he is a backup quarterback for Green Bay back when Rodgers is there, still follows the team pretty closely, and he made the play look like it was actually impressive how Love was able to get the ball off. And Tucker Kraft, who had a really good game, he kind of stopped like halfway through the play, expecting that Love was going to get sacked for a safety. And once he stopped, Jordan Love tried to lead him with that throw. The defensive back continued to run where Tucker Kraft didn't. If Kraft did, he might make that catch and it's not a pick six and we don't have this conversation. But it's not a lot you can throw on Love. There of course can be some unrest and uneasiness when you see a guy throwing interceptions at a very high rate, but Green Bay fans, especially ones that have been watching since the 90s, you can understand that interceptions, you can still win games with interceptions. That's how Brett Favre played. That's not how you want to do it. Of course, it's a very stark contrast compared to how Aaron Rodgers played, where I think at times he almost played a little bit too safe, where I think there's just too much talent and you have too many guys there. I'm not worried about this Packers offense at all. Devontae Wyatt still out of practice, dealing with that ankle injury. This is, especially now you're going to be dealing with a mobile quarterback once again in Kyler Murray coming up this weekend. You'd love to see Wyatt in there because he has been a disruptor up front. But some of those guys are going to have to step up, and I'm looking at those edge rushers. I'm looking at Rashawn Gary, Lucas Van Ness. He's had a pretty solid start to the year so far, but I want to see those guys go on and make a couple of big plays, at least hold the edge and keep Kyler Murray in the pocket. Because when he gets outside and he starts running around like a toddler that just stole some candy, that's where things can go haywire there for the Packers defense. But I'm confident that they'll get back in. It's just Devontae Wyatt not being in that lineup. It really hurts the defense, and they struggled a lot in the run game last week. So we'll see how they adapt and how they can come out and play against a solid Arizona team that just beat San Francisco, and they were really close to beating Detroit as well. This is not a for sure win game at all. I'm confident in where the Packers stand against this Arizona team, but there's going to be some interesting plays. I don't think this is going to be a runaway game at all. And if it is, I don't see Arizona running and just stopping Green Bay. I would see Green Bay being the team that blows them out. But, yeah, so Dobbs, Watson, they're back. Wyatt is still out. And Xavier McKinney continues to do historical things. And we'll keep on talking about it, or at least I hope we do, because this is special stuff. 5 interceptions in an entire season is really, really good numbers, and McKinney's done that already. Other big news, this is baseball now. Major League Baseball has announced that it will produce and distribute local TV broadcasts for the Brewers. Bally Sports, who've been covering for the Brewers the last couple of years, ever since they got the rights from Fox Sports Wisconsin. Bally Sports has since gone bankrupt, and we didn't know where the TV deals were going to be. I think we talked about it pretty early when I started the podcast here about a month and a half ago, but now we kind of know what it's going to look like. Arizona and Colorado and San Diego all had the same thing last year, where MLB actually produced their local broadcasts. And the pricing for that, you're going to have a couple of options, but it's going to be pretty similar to what Bally had. It's $20 a month if you want to stream all the Brewers, or you can just pay $100 for the whole season, which me, as a diehard Brewers fan, and I know I'm going to be watching the whole time, I'm going to go out and I'm going to pay the $100 to go watch them for the entire season. They'll pay it once, you get the whole package. That's awesome. $100, I can do that. I think that's... If you're a big Brewers fan, you'll pay that. Of course, you hate that it's not included with your cable package, which this is where all sports are going to go. Everything's going to go away from cable, and it's going to start to go to streaming. And I'm a younger guy, so it's okay for me. I understand how a lot of that works, and that's kind of what I've been growing up in, at least through high school and college and now post-college. Like, I don't really watch cable TV at all. I have a login to my mom's old cable TV, and I use that, but I get a lot of stuff off of streaming as well, and I think that's where the world is going to continue to go, and you just hope it doesn't become a monopoly where one outlet owns everything and distributes everything, because then they can price gouge, and that's a whole economic conversation that I hope we don't have to have at any point. But I think this is good. It'll be reasonable, $100 for the whole season. That's the price to pay. That's going to the Brewer game with maybe 2 kids and your wife, and you probably get a couple of beers at the game. That would be about $100. Now you get to pay that and watch them in your living room for the whole season. Other big news, all the broadcasters, it has been announced that they will be coming back. So all the people that you saw on the Brewers broadcast team last year, all the people that talked, your Sophia Minards, your Jeff Leverings, your Bill Schroeder, Brian Anderson, Lane Grindle, Josh Maurer, they will all be back broadcasting for the Brewers, and that's good. We got one of the best broadcast teams in all of baseball, maybe even all of sports. We're really blessed here in the state of Wisconsin, and it's great that all those people are going to come back. Of course, we talked a little bit about Bob Uecker, and there's a couple of question marks flying up in the air. He's going to be 91 next year, so there's no promise, of course, but I think if he himself feels like he wants to be there, he will. They pretty much say it's going to be on a day-by-day basis, just like it was last year. I would be very surprised if Bob Uecker does not hop on the mic at some point next season. This is just one little tidbit that I wanted to touch on because I talked a little bit about it before, the whole Jesse Winker situation where he played for Milwaukee last year, was terrible. They gave him an at-bat in the playoffs, and all the fans booed him. Jesse Winker, of course, now playing for the New York Mets. The Mets just beat the Brewers. Now the Mets are actually up on the Padres. No, not Padres. The Philadelphia Phillies, 2-1 in the divisional series. Jesse Winker's had some pretty big hits in that series as well. I don't know where this is brought up at any point in conversation with Jesse Winker, but it is on record, and he said, quote, "As far as Milwaukee goes, I'll hate them forever. At least the feelings are mutual, Jesse." And it kind of sucked for him. I know it was a bad mental space in Milwaukee, of course. He was on a 1-year deal coming from Seattle, a prove-it deal, and he was coming off of an injury to a new place. He struggled. And then, of course, is put in a big spot for the Brewers in the playoffs, where I didn't think Winker should have been even on the playoff roster, and somehow he even got an at-bat. And the fans showed their frustration. Of course, that booing could have been towards Jesse Winker, or it could have been towards Craig Counsell and the decision that he made. But, of course, Winker standing in that box, that's the team. They're supposed to have your back. The fans are supposed to have your back, especially in a big spot. You're coming up to the plate. And, yeah, he stunk last year. He was one of the worst qualified hitters in all of baseball. And probably shouldn't have even been put in that position, but he was. And the fans showed their frustration. And then, of course, he came back to Milwaukee for that wild card series this year. And the Milwaukee fans booed the heck out of him, which, understandable. It didn't sound like he was a great teammate in even Cincinnati or Seattle, and then went to Milwaukee, then started this year actually for the Nationals, and then was traded to the Mets. David Stearns, who, of course, the former Brewers GM, decided that he wanted to have him back on the roster that he was constructing for the New York Mets, and that roster has performed really well, and Jesse Winker has been a big catalyst for them. And I see where he's coming from, but I think he also played really childish. I was not a fan of him gargantuan slamming his helmet after scoring not even a go-ahead run, but an insurance run, where he had to get hit by pitch to even get on base. And he stuck out his little elbow with his elbow pad, and then runs around the bases and scores, and then takes off his helmet and smashes it on home plate. That was pretty childish. Was not impressed with that, and he will get booed anytime he comes to Milwaukee for the rest of his career. And at this point, I'm okay with that. If I'm ever in the stands, I'm going to boo him as well. So for all of you kind of lukewarm Brewers fans, just know that where Manny Machado was, and anytime that he comes back to Milwaukee, they always boo him. He's a bad guy. Now Jesse Winker is a solidified bad guy. He hates Milwaukee as well. So they're going to give it to him. So anytime that Jesse Winker's up to the plate, even if you're sitting on your couch, you might let out a little boo, and it'll be understandable. I'll be right there with you. So now we're going to move on to the Wisconsin Badgers. I don't have a whole lot, but a very big game coming up on Saturday. They're going to be going to Rutgers. And Rutgers, they're having one of their best seasons in recent history. They are 4-1, 1-1 in the Big Ten. This is probably as excited as a Rutgers fan base has felt in a very long time. And Wisconsin got off to a little bit of a roll last week against Purdue. His Braden Locke started out really, really poor, and I watched both of his interceptions. They were terrible. He did not look good at the start of that game. But then when I left the bar, I wasn't watching the Badgers anymore. I went to go watch my brother's high school football game. I didn't see the rest of that game. But the numbers and what I'm hearing from other people is Locke was essentially perfect after he threw that second interception. And with the big blowout win, that's expected. Will Pauling is going to be back. He's been practicing with the Badgers. In that win against Purdue, he rolled up his ankle. Looks like he's going to be back. But Trek Kekahuna is now the freshman star wide receiver for the Badgers. You got two really solid options. Vinny Anderson, as actually three now for the Badgers, which is something that they have not had in the passing game ever since I've started watching the Wisconsin Badgers, having three guys that are explosive, good yards after the catch. Now you get Pauling. Kekahuna is an exceptional football player. I am really a big Kekahuna fan. I like Pauling as well. Anderson has shown some flashes. CJ Williams is there. He had a lot of hype coming in. We haven't seen too much out of him production-wise, but there's some things to be excited about, and it'll be a big turning point this weekend at Rutgers. We'll see if the Badgers can build off of that big win against Purdue. Now, the first time I'm talking any Milwaukee Bucks is happening today, October 9th, 2024, on A Little Bit of Cheese. Rajon Rondo earlier this week was hired by the Bucks There was not a specific role that was given to him, but it was discussed as a, quote, guest coach role. And if you don't know who Rajon Rondo is, he's a NBA champion. I think he's actually got a couple of championships, but he bounced around towards the end of his career. He was a point guard, one of the smartest players in all of basketball. I'm not surprised at all that he hopped into a coaching role. And Brandon Jennings, former Bucks player, he tweeted out, quote, Rondo will be the head coach of the Milwaukee Bucks. And I look at this situation similar to the Brewers bringing in Ricky Weeks to be the assistant manager to Pat Murphy. You're going to have some continuity here. I like that they're bringing young guys in. Doc Rivers is going to be the head coach this year. That's already known, but now you're going to have somebody in the building that once Doc Rivers decides he no longer wants to coach, which I believe he retired at one point anyway, so retirement could be after this season. Now you're going to have some continuity, possibly, if that's where they want to go with Rajon Rondo. You got a really smart former player in the building. He knows how to work with guys. He's been on championship teams. It's good for the culture. It really is. I'm excited about that, and I get Rondo in the building as well, and the Bucks will get going in a few weeks here. So just we'll do a quick summary here at the end. Xavier McKinney, Defensive Player of the Week. Dobbs and Watson back in practice for the Packers. No Devontae Wyatt quite yet. Didn't read anything specific on where he's at coming off of that ankle injury. Then the Brewers will get their broadcast done by Major League Baseball, and it'll be either $20 a month or $100 for the whole season. All the broadcasters will be back. Jesse Winker hates all of us here. The Badgers getting set for one of their biggest games of the season, and Rajon Rondo is a Milwaukee Bucks coach. So we'll be back tomorrow with hopefully some more exciting stuff once again. We'll get more prep work done for that Packers game, the Badgers game coming up, and we'll see where the MLB playoffs are shaking out. But it really looks like the New York Mets are in a solid position to go on to the National League Championship Series, and it looks like the curse might be staying alive for at least one more week. My name is Cody Depius. I want to thank you for being here with us once again today. We'll see you tomorrow for another edition of A Little Bit of Cheese, your daily bite-sized Wisconsin sports podcast.